In the last couple of videos, I covered basic arrays. In this video, I'll be covering some related features. If you can believe it, I want to revisit the main method. Bear with me, there is a good reason for this. You probably have the structure of the main method memorized by now. Notice here, if you haven't noticed before, that the parameter to the main method is an array of string. This means we can pass an array of strings to this method when it's called. Or, if we use this method as the entry point to our application, we can pass data on the command line to this method. Up until now, I've only shown you this particular method signature, but this signature can be written in a slightly different way. We can replace the brackets after the string type, which we know tells us this method will take an array of string, and we can instead replace that with 3 periods. This is a special designation for Java. That means Java will take 0, 1, or many strings as arguments to this method and create an array with which to process them in the method. The array will be called args and be of type string. So what's the difference then? The difference is minor within the method body, but significant to the code that calls the method. Let's review this in code. I've created a project called var args with the main class and main method in the dev.lpa package. I'm going to change that main method to use the var args version for the parameter. And let's just print something out and confirm that it works. I'll print the string literal hello world again, and running that. Everything works as before, so this change hasn't shown anything different so far. Let me create my own method that will print out an array of strings, each on its own line. Private static void print text and a string of array parameter called text list. Using for each, I'll cycle through the text list array using t as the element name. And I'll print t, which is effectively printing each string passed to the method. This method takes an array of strings and prints each string on its own line using an enhanced for loop. I will call this method from the main method. I'll come back and change the method signature shortly. Firstly, now that you know about arrays, I also want to introduce you to a string method I haven't covered yet that you'll find very useful in the future, and that's the split method, which splits a string into a string array by whatever delimiter you tell it to use. String array split strings equals the literal string hello world again, dot split with a literal string containing a space as the argument. I'll call print text passing my split strings. In this code, I have a string literal, which is just the hello world again sentence, and I'm immediately calling the split method a string instance method. This method takes a string, which can support regular expressions, which tells the method what the string should be split on. In this case, I'm going to split by the spaces in the sentence. This means this string will get split into pieces, and the method returns an array of the parts, an array of string. You might remember that you learned about the join method on string, which concatenates multiple strings together into one string. The split method does the opposite. Let's run this code. You can see that I got an array of 3 strings back, and these are printed out on separate lines using my method. I'll change my method that prints this array from accepting an array to accepting variable arguments for the string. And all I need to do is replace the brackets with 3 periods. And if I run that, I got the exact same result. So what's the big deal, you might be asking? The variable arguments parameter gives us a lot more options when we execute the method. Let's look at these. First, I already know I can pass an array to this method, but what's really neat is that I can pass a simple string if I want to. I'll print a separator line using 20 underscores, and I'll call print text again, passing the string literal hello. First, I'll just include a separating line here for clarity when I look at the output. Now notice here though, I'm calling that same method, but I'm only passing a single string. I'm not passing an array at all. This code compiles and runs. The method prints just hello, as you can see. I'll copy and paste those last 2 lines. But this time, I'll pass several strings to the method, again not as an array, just as arguments to the method. Instead of having to overload this method to take an array of string, a single string, 2 strings or whatever, I have a single method declared. This feature lets me create one method to support multiple ways of calling this method. In fact, I can call this method with no arguments at all, so let's copy and paste those same 2 lines. But this time, I won't pass anything as an argument to the method. And this code runs too. Now there are some restrictions on when you can use variable arguments as a method parameter. There can be only one variable argument in a method. The variable argument must be the last argument. Those rules are pretty easy to remember. You'll find that Java uses variable arguments in many methods contained in its library classes. In fact, the string.join method itself uses a variable argument as its last argument, which is why the delimiter needs to be specified first. I've shown you how to use this method with multiple strings, but it can also be used with an array of string. So let's look at that. String array sArray equals and 5 literal strings in curly braces. I'll print out string.join with a comma and sArray as arguments. First, I'm creating a string array, and here I'm using an anonymous array initializer. It's called anonymous because the type isn't included, but Java can figure it out because it's being used in a declaration statement. Next, I print out the result of the string.join method with a comma as the first value and my array as the last argument. And I can run that. You can see the output printing a single string of my elements, comma delimited. So that was variable arguments, and using arrays as method arguments. Whichever you choose will depend on the other parameters in the method arguments list, as well as whether you want your users to have the ability to pass a variable list of elements versus just passing an array of elements. In the next 2 videos, I have 2 array challenges for you, which hopefully will solidify your understanding of the topics I've covered in this section. See you in the next video.